From our free daily newsletter, the latest from podnews.net with Magellan AI. 13% of US weekly podcast consumers say they consume podcasts most often on the television. Edison Podcast Metrics report it's the highest figure yet and reflects the growing number of podcasts making it to YouTube, Netflix, Tubi and other video platforms. Spotify has expanded its Equal program with its first Equal Podcast Ambassador, hoping that the company can help elevate women podcasters and help promote women creators behind the podcast microphone. It's Morgan Absher, the host of Spotify show Two Hot Takes, who told us,
when I started podcasting, the first place you look is the charts, and you're like, how do I do it? How do I do it as well as the top and the best is doing it? And there wasn't many women at the top. And so to start having more inclusion and a way to amplify, women-led podcasts, I think it just really helps.
We'll have a full interview in tomorrow's Pod News Weekly Review. The founder of Crooked Media, Tommy Vitor, isn't happy with Spotify. He starts an X-post saying, very cool of Spotify to try and destroy the podcast industry. He's not talking about the Equal plan. He's talking about our story, unveiling Spotify's controversial new Skip Ahead feature. And Mediaite has also taken up the story. Meanwhile, Glenn Rubenstein of Adopter Media in a blog post says automated editorial decisions and suggestions about someone else's content shouldn't be made by a party that had no role in creating it. He suggests that host-read ads should feel part of the show, that excessive stuffing of ads into shows isn't doing the industry any favours, and that podcast platforms should offer the episode as published. Presumably, he wouldn't be a big fan of somebody putting a skip ahead button when it thinks it's not worth listening to. Nobody would do that. Back in December 2021, the National Association of the Deaf and Disability Rights Activists sued SiriusXM for not providing podcast transcripts in its app. In 2022, SiriusXM kicked back, calling it unnecessary and unreasonable. But since then, we've seen Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Overcast, Spotify, and even SiriusXM add transcripts to podcast apps, to the point where it's now an expected feature. It appears that the two sides have reached agreement in principle on all key terms after more than a year of negotiations suspended the court action. Judge Jeanette Vargas has allowed a final deadline extension of October the 30th. Now, in our opinion, this court action helped make podcast transcripts mainstream. The National Association of the Deaf should be congratulated. But also, continued negotiation helps no one now but the lawyers. We love lawyers, especially lawyers with beards. But enough already. New figures from the BBC claim the corporation's podcasts on YouTube are up 17.4% quarter on quarter, but they only reach 4.7 million views. BBC podcasts generated 215 million global downloads. That's up 4% year on year. In the UK, there were 831 million plays of content on BBC Sounds, up 19% year on year, although a play isn't defined. But is the BBC about to try to put advertising back into its podcasts in the UK? It sounds like they're trying again, according to a letter from a coalition of companies to the UK government, urging the DCMS Secretary, Lisa Nandy, to rule out the plans. The New Zealand Podcast Awards is now officially open for entries. You've until October the 9th to enter. Pricing is as low as 50 New Zealand dollars, that's 30 US dollars for independent podcasters. Fresh Air has a new website at freshair.agency, highlighting the full range of services that the company provides. A new free podcast loudness checker from Saltwave Studios has been launched. The tool is based on 20 years of broadcast audio judgment and gives detail on what a broadcast engineer would say about your audio. Everything happens in your browser. Descript released a bunch of new features, including smoother jump cuts, recording room scheduling, and a YouTube thumbnail generator. And in London, the Dean Street Podcast Studio hosted 7 international broadcasters, all interviewing a man with a bin on his head who is standing for the UK Parliament. The system is also available for people without bins on their heads. And in podcast news, winning, Charlie Sheen is to launch a podcast with Red Seat Ventures, Mostly Sheenius. We'll feature candid conversations with some of the biggest names in entertainment, sport, music, and popular culture. What other type of conversations can there possibly be other than candid ones? And launching today, Home Truths is a new housing podcast for Australia from the company's largest house builder. The show pairs a property economist, Cameron Cusher, with Metricon's CEO, Brad Duggan, to help Aussies navigate interest rates, tax reforms, affordability, and the housing market. And this podcast is sponsored by Magellan AI. Let's talk podcast ad spend benchmarks. Not now. Get the Q2 rundown from Cameron live on August the 20th. You can join the webinar with Magellan AI. You'll find a link in our show notes. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe for free, we're at podnews.net.